Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Look who I have. Co-host number 2, Ethan. He's never up here. And he's shedding so bad. Usually my little mama cat's up here. My co-host number 1. I hope everybody's doing good today. Please helps me out. Share and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I know a lot of people say that, but it helps. I groom him all the time. Chunks of hair. So today I'm going to be finishing, I'm really sad actually about this, The Keys to the Universe. I'm sad because this is really a really informative book. It's really ties in numbers, tarot cards, the Hebrew alphabet, all of it. And it makes a lot of sense, at least to me. Yeah. So I'm going to finish it off. This is chapter 40. The joy of completion. Although I don't joy in completing this book. I wish it went on for a longer span of time, but again, it is what it is. Quote, make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations. End quote. Psalms 25. Quote, believe thou not that sitting in the dark forests, in proud seclusion and apart from men, believe thou not that life on roots and plants, that thirst assuaged with snow from great range, believe thou not, O devotee, that this will lead thee to the goal of final liberation. End quote. The Voice of Silence, Blavatsky. Since the number 10 is completion, it is well to close this volume on the first cycle of the digits with some definite thoughts on the characteristics of completion. The attributes of completion are, first, peace. The struggle of accomplishment is over. 2, harmony. All the conflicting elements have found their proper places and hence work harmoniously together. 3, joy. The joy of achievement, of obtainment, the vibration of ecstasy that comes when the creation or outer manifestation expresses the ideal. Job tells us that when the foundations of the physical earth were completed and the earth was ready for man, quote, the morning star sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy, end quote. This creation was accomplished in an outpouring of joy, love, and harmony, just as today we find the joy and harmony in the happy songs of the birds, constantly sending out harmonious vibrations, which help most materially to unfold and perfect the leaves and flowers. In fact, if we are to believe the Bible or any other sacred scripture, the creation of the earth was set to music of the most joyful measure, symbolized by the spoken word. The very rhythm of earth, even the rock strata, proclaim it, as well as the persistent joyness of all nature, which ever returns to smiles after tears. No matter how devastating the storm or how appalling the catastrophe, nature will, in a few short months or years, heal the ugly wounds and cover the scars with living verdure. After the tempest and shipwreck, how beautifully the sunlight dances upon the waters. After the storm, how green the leaves, how glad the songs of the birds. Joy is the keynote of creation, ever proclaiming to man's God's divine plan of peace, harmony, and perfection. It is nature's voice proclaiming the utter fallacy of the belief in the supremacy of error or evil, telling man that only through joy and peace and harmony can completion be reached. That all which is apart and cannot vibrate to this joy and harmony is ethereal, to be swept aside as mere passing phase of existence. It is the grand psalm of life, speaking of the unanswering and unswerving ongoing of the Lord of hosts, the law of the hosts of the air, the water, the earth, and the fire, who has looked upon his works and proclaimed them good. Quote, thou shalt rejoice in every good thing which the Lord thy God hath given thee, end quote, Deuteronomy. In spite of all that man can do to mar nature by his evil thoughts, his inharmonics, his vile emanations, his wars, we still find her persistently smiling, persistently calling the children of men to rest upon her bosom. Geologists tell us that the earth was created during 4 great eras called the Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic, thus confirming, and guys, again, I don't think I pronounced that properly. You know, my spiel on that. Thus confirming the occult teaching that 4 is nature's foundation stone upon which the completion of number 10 is to be erected. 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 = 10. Through all these long ages, while the physical earth was passing through its evolution toward completion in number 10, there were terrible upheavals, changes, and what man might call evils. Yet the sons of God, spoken by Job, were not overcome with sorrow for that which was swept away to make room for the new, but instead they shouted for joy, knowing full well that change must succeed change until the completion of number 10, because it contains the achievement of all the digits, not one thing being lost. The evolution of the planet has taught us that out of imperfection is perfection, builded up and brought forth. Hence, there is nothing to grieve over or regret if an experience has tended toward our perfection and completion. For the earth today is of the same substance as that which was breathed out as fire mist in the beginning, but under a different phase of expression. We still find that it contains all things for men's well-being, not only food, clothing, healing, herbs, but all things needed to build his cities, to carry on his commerce, and to light and cheer him on his way. We also find nature always beautiful and gracious, with ever a mystical and magical power to charm. While the earth as a dwelling place for man reached the completion of the first expression of number 10 in 4 men, being sedentary must pass through the cycles of evolution indicated by the digits up to 7 to reach his first cycle of completion. Thus, the earth reaches its completion in 4 periods. 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 = 10. Man reaches his completion in 7. 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6 + 7 plus 6 + 7 = 28 = 10. And Superman is 10 periods. 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6 + 7 + 8 + 9 + 10 = 55 = 10. Since nature has passed her first cycle, she becomes the man as completed book of the law, written with the finger of God, in which every step of man's evolution is exemplified. For on his higher spiral, he must pass through the steps corresponding to those which brought completion to the earth. Hence, in nature, there is work out and displayed before man an answer to every problem to be met with in his evolution, even though until man realizes his oneness with nature and his power to affect her, he continually casts a reflection of his own inharmonics upon her. One of the great lessons written on every page of the Book of Nature, and which runs as a golden thread through every expression of the one life manifesting in her, is the lesson of the joy and gladness and the eternal peace and harmony in life, the ever reverting back to joy and harmony after each disturbances of her equilibrium, together with the ephemeral and transitory nature of all in harmony. This is man's great lesson, and until he learns it, he will be like the planet while forming, subject to terrible storms, cataclysms, and disasters. Through an almost universal misconception of all spiritual teachings, man has been and is inclined to lay great stress on the necessity of suffering. In fact, this phase of spiritual teaching has been carried to such great extremes that it has been looked upon as meritorious to suffer. Man has even used his intellect and will to devise tortures for his body and for his mind, thus deliberately setting himself up as critic and judge of that which God has created, forgetting that man is made in God's image and that man's physical body is necessary to complete God's expression in matter. Just as physical planet was needed to give God a field of action on the physical plane, and just as God made the physical planet beautiful, harmonious and complete, so must man's body be beautiful, harmonious, and complete, he can be said to have laid the physical foundation on which the Superman can begin his evolution. Remember that even the highest and purest inspiration must be interpreted by the brain of that one giving it out. Hence, only that which is found written in and can be proved by the great book of nature can be absolutely depended upon this book of nature. Each soul must ultimately learn to read for himself. No matter how high or advanced the teacher, the only perfect teaching is to show man how to decipher and interpret the book of nature for himself. If this were done, there could not be such a wide gulf between science and religion. Hence, in our contemplation of the number 10, we wish to turn from the interpretation of the book of life as sorrow and suffering and emphasize the gospel of joy, to reiterate again and again that as long as we dwell in the thought of sorrow or permit ourselves to believe that the only way to evolve Godward is to trample on his gifts, to insult him with the idea that all the beauty and perfection and joy of life have been evolved through ages of growth, not to make man's pathway through these lower levels of evolution more joyful, and to teach him of the grandeur and goodness of the wonderful outflowing graciousness of divine love, that would not that any perish, but all have eternal life. But that all this wonderful stage setting was elaborated merely as a temptation to hold man back, to make his struggles harder, that we must expect to suffer. As long as the teachers of religion make its living a dark, hopeless sacrifice, telling man he must give up all joy, all ease and comfort, all that God had so carefully and bountifully prepared for this happiness of his children and must spend the rest of his life in scourgings, either of the flesh or of the mind, they are all demanding something which is not in the scheme of God's law, something not necessary but initial to man's completion, something not written in the book of nature. Hence, it is natural for the whole mind and inner consciousness of man to rebel. Because man for a time believes what is taught him, he is overcome with a sense of his utter unworthiness. But later on, when he finds that he cannot easily kill out the joy of life, which is innate in him, he turns away from the gloomy picture of religion as a sacrifice and pushes aside what he is taught, are the demands of his soul, until he has enjoyed the beautiful world and has listened to the natural cry of his senses for a time, because he is taught that all the beauty and enjoyment of life are wrong. He separates divine love from life, separates life from God, looks upon joy as evil. The world of beauty he is taught to consider a temptation, a field in which he can revel only as a traitor to his divine nature, a field in which to express only his lower instincts. So with his higher nature pushed back, he goes forth to indulge his lower nature and its appetites, to kill and slaughter birds, animals, and his fellow man, to spread death and disaster wherever his foot has trodden. Because he is taught that the gold and wealth stored up for his use are inherently evil, are put there but to tempt his greed and avarice, he turns his back on the good that the wealth of nature was intended to bring about and tries to grasp all he can, tries to enjoy in his own selfish way all the wealth and power can give him. But the law is inexorable, and everything that interferes with the peaceful and harmonious joy of life and with evolution must be ruthlessly swept aside, and nature allowed to return again to its smiles. We're going there. So man's misguided religious teachings and selfishness, which have turned the gifts of God into instruments of self-indulgence, must be swept away. This is done by war, famine, pestilence, and all manner of evils. Who dares say, however, that these are intended as parts of God's plan? I've been saying that, and are necessary to man's completion. They are only the inevitable result of man's own perversion of God's laws and gifts. Who shall say that those well-meaning teachers whom Jesus called blind leaders of the blind, who have impressed on the world for so many long ages the desirability of suffering, and have made religion such a dark picture that man has rebelled and entirely blameless? The humanity of the world as a whole will never reach completion in number 10 until the leaders and teachers permit the Christ to anoint their eyes, that they may be healed of their blindness and look in nature's book for the interpretation of the inspiration given them, and learn to read with the open eye of spirit. Once this is done, they will teach man the gospel of joy, teach him to look for the one life, the spark of spiritual oneness in all things, teach him that man is made in God's image, hence all things in him are expressions of the divine. When put in their proper uses, that religion is seeing the divine back of all and manifesting in it the life. That nothing that is selfish is in reality joyous, nor can it endure, but the real joy is the enduring reality of vibrating in harmony with the divine ideal. The number 10 for man will bring beauty, joy, peace, harmony, love, understanding, discretion, wisdom, realization, and completion. Then, with the sons of God, man can shout for joy and sing understandingly the hymn, he now sings with little real appreciation. Quote, joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her king. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing, end quote. Quote, blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kin, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessing upon thee in the storehouses and in all that thou settest thine hand unto, end quote. Quote, the man of sorrow and acquainted with grief, end quote, must be crucified that the divine Christ, the Son of God, may manifest in completion and sit forever at the right hand of his Father, where he is lifted up and shines as a spiritual sun in the divine world, drawing out all men unto him. Quote, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning, end quote. Psalms 5. That is the end. I'm sad. So sad. I might read the appendix. Guys, it's like almost 3 a.m. by me. I can't sleep, by the way. All right. I'm going to do it. The appendix it is. It's very tiny, so please bear with me. But there might be some goodies in here. I'm gonna get a little intimate with you guys. Come closer. To the 2nd edition, in response to the many inquiries received since the 1st edition was published in regard to our teachings as to the other and higher uses of the creative force besides that of procreation, we would say that it must be remembered that the creative force is the divine creative power of the Godhead, the fructifying and vivifying power through whose action all things are brought into manifestation, and that it becomes sex force only when focused in and acting through the sex centers. When acting through other centers, for instance, through the brain or hands in literary or musical composition, planning a building, painting a picture, modeling in clay, designing a dress, or any other form of creative work, not more physical exercise, it is still the divine creative force that is being used, but it is not sex force because it is not functioning through those centers. Keep this fundamental conception in mind. The main object of our teaching has always been to help the great masses of married people who are advancing spiritually and whose desire to live as highly as spiritual life as possible, yet who are neither advanced enough nor strong enough to live a strictly celibate life without sexual intercourse. Oh boy. Hence the teachings aim to show how to take the simpler steps before attaining the more advanced. The first step is to eradicate the idea that there is anything impure or evil about sex relation in itself. It becomes impure and evil only when thought of as impure and used merely to minister to lust, and not as an expression of pure love between lawfully married couples. Oh, geez. And guys, remember, this was written back in like, I forgot, but like the 1900, 18 something. I'll go back and I'll look. Oh no, I lost my place. The first step to eradicate the idea that there is anything impure or evil about sex relation in itself, it becomes impure and evil only when, okay, with the lust. When we say lawfully married, we mean made one in the sight of both God and man. For while the mere repetition of a marriage ceremony, differing as it does in many countries, is not of itself a true marriage, and by a true marriage we mean a true marriage of the soul, not a mere union of the sexes. And granting a true marriage is be one of divine contemplation. Nevertheless, it is not a true marriage on earth until solemnized and recognized and legalized according to the laws of whatever country the couple may be living in. Only under such circumstances is sexual union permissible. And even under such conditions, if impure thoughts concerning it are held by one or both of the parties, especially during the union, it becomes impure. Our aim is therefore to teach those who are not ready for the more advanced steps to purify and uplift their union by holding thoughts of purity, love, peace, and harmony concerning it. So back in the day, these things were preached in a lot of places, in a lot of cultures. Take it with a grain of salt. Though there is a point to this, though. As we have grown as a society since this book was written and expressed, the dynamic of spirituality and the dynamic of human wants and needs really hasn't changed. For my own self, I never married somebody because I wasn't a spiritually soul leveled match with them. Most of my relationships were karmic. There was lessons, they were catalysts for me to learn from. I taught them, they taught me, and we moved on our very separate ways. You know, there was pain and suffering and all of that, but then we, you know, two good people just playing out the karmic role that we had for each other. And, you know, I still talk to some of them and they're decent and beautiful people. I'm happy for them wherever they are in their lives. But I refuse to be with anybody in my current circumstances until I know it's a soul match. And a lot of people are doing the same thing. It's okay to be alone. The second step to teach them to moderate and control it and transmute it, as long as they feel that the need is expression. It may be limited to procreation by those who have so control it that they can limit its expression to once in 2 or 3 years. Naturally, and without sense of repression and without creating inharmony and perhaps breaking up the home and family. Oh dear. For those who cannot thus limit it naturally and harmoniously, it can be transmuted and used on the higher planes through the directing power of thought and high ideals to create in the higher realms the mental and spiritual qualities and bringing forth the ideas that they most desire to manifest in their lives. This is not using sexual force for spiritual development, but is using the divine creative force. Thus, together with the exchanging and balancing of positive and negative magnetic and psychic currents, is what we mean by saying that it has other and higher uses than procreation. For we have seen that procreation only doctrine break up many otherwise happy families and cause untold misery among them. Oh gosh. All of which is unnecessary. Even if one of the two is unwilling to join in the ideals of transmutation, the other alone can accomplish a great deal by holding those ideals, not in rebellion, but in love and harmony during the union. This is very interesting. That's why I'm reading it. For the unmarried, or for those who have, for any reason, karmic or otherwise, are temporarily separated from their complementary mates, transmutation through the other channels mentioned above is, of course, the only method of expression open to them. Very often, because one has refused to listen to the inner guiding of voice, or because passion or worldly ends have blinded them to the inner guidance, they find themselves married in merely earthly sense to one whom they realize is not their true mate, and later find in another whom they recognize as the true mate. Such a mistake can in no wise excuse a violation of their marriage vow. Certain modern doctrines of so-called freedom is this respected we regard as false and most pernicious. In fact, such a recognition makes more binding the law of land. For since such couples are joined only by the law of man and not by divine harmony and love, and since they have voluntarily submitted to it, they must be true to its mandates until the same law sets them free. I know quite a number of people who have a hard time being alone and learning how to be alone. And they just jump into any relationship and just it bounce back and forth, and they always have to seek somebody else out instead of seeking themselves and understanding themselves and what they need for a better balanced person in their lives. They just bounce and bounce and bounce, and they're not really, it's more out of lust. Listen, indulge all you want. You live YOLO. Okay? Consciously, you're here YOLO. You only live once, consciously. Okay? Do you, right? Experience life. But if you're reaching to a spiritual means, yeah, to unattached emotions when you're just having your needs met. On this point, we admit no latitude whatever. Transmutation can be accomplished alone, but it must slower and more difficult than when each has the help of another. The method of transmutation is fully dealt with in the chapter on the sex problem in our letters from the teacher. The third step can reach only by the comparatively few, the stage in which the force is not merely controlled and purified, but in which even the desire for physical union is transcended or outgrown, not merely repressed and denied with great struggle, but is no longer felt. It is truly mastered. Here, the desire for physical union has been transmuted into aspiration or desire for union with the divine, the higher self. When this stage is reached, all the necessary exchange of magnetism can be obtained by mere social contract with each other. Even here, great discretion must be used, and each must be faithful to his or her true mate. For when magnetism has become the vehicle for the exchange of the positive and negative force, it is just as much adultery to mix magnetism promiscuously as it would be on the lower plane to mix sex force. When the stage is reached, all the forces can be used in the higher realms without feeling any call from, hence without denying or repressing the sex centers. And since there is no desire for physical union, there is no suppression or regression, and no inharmony arises, and both work as normally together in this higher relation, and both are fully satisfied by the relationship as they were in the lower stages while obtaining to it. At this stage, it must be firmly understood that whom God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. For when two souls have reached this stage of oneness, there can be no more putting asunder or divorce. To teach indiscriminately to the spiritual undeveloped that they must refuse the natural demands of their lawful wedded mate, in many cases brought to our attention, the demands of the wife have been as insistent as those supposed to be made only by men, before their mate understands what it is all about, or is willing to accept, and still desires the usual normal relations, and is not ready for either transmutation or regeneration. Such teaching, we repeat, in our experience, in the cause of greater inharmony and evil than that which is designed to correct. The effect on the average husband is either to cause the greatest inharmony and unhappiness, or to cause a separation, in many cases driving him outside the family for what he considers his rights, or it completely breaks up the otherwise happy family. I'm blown away by this family. Through divorce. The effect on the woman, since in most cases her denial merely results in suppression, unless really transmuted to fill her mind an entire outlook upon life with thoughts of sex, when she should be turning her mind away from it. Even the very effort to avoid it is but focusing her mind upon the subject, and so saturating her aura with it that she becomes a greater attraction for and easy prey to obsessing entities from the astral world, who are either seeking just such gratification, thus depleting her physically as well as astrally and magnetically. Of this we have ample evidence from the cases who apply to us personally for help in nearly every city in which we have lectured, and by letter from almost every part of the world. Therefore, we say there can be no hard and fast rule or forcible denial for all stages of development, except the rule of purity, normality, moderation, harmony, love, any more than we can expect the same standard of conduct from children of all ages, exempt in the fundamentals. We therefore maintain that there must be at least 3 stages in the mastery of these forces. First, purification on body-minded. Second, transmutation or diversion from the lower centers by use through the higher. And third, regeneration of the conscious and harmonious use of the forces by both in the higher realms. Thus is not sex, worship, or phallicism. To endeavor to kill out or suppress this function, or so to fear it, that the very sight of the oppressed precipitates the thoughts to this, and passion level is not the way to mastery. True mastery or regeneration can only be obtained by two souls working in unison and harmony, both desiring only the higher uses of the creative force and working toward it without strain and without striving to force themselves beyond their normal stage of development, as evidenced by the character of their desires. In reply to many questions, we would say that we do not approve of Dr. Stockham's book, Cariza, because its conclusion is unnatural and abnormal, and in many cases has simply become a means of ministering to indulgence, since the mind and thought is concentrated on the act instead of being centered above the physical union, so that the act and the union itself is forgotten in the concentration of the higher ideals. In conclusion, our main plea is first, be natural and normal, but pure and wholesome in your relation. Second, purify and uplift your mind and thought concerning those relations until the mere physical expression is no longer necessary or desired. Only then you are ready for a higher step. That end of all, end. There's a humongous index though. They have a voice of Isis. And there's a volume 2 to this book. Okay, now I'm gonna have to find it. The Key to the Universe, volume 2. A continuation of the spiritual interpretation of numbers, the Hebrew letters, and tarot cards. Interprets the number cards and letters from 11 to 22. Also the higher numbers of vital interest, such as the number of the circle, the number of the beast, the number of infinite nature, and the number of elect. I gotta find this book. The geometrical law of proportion on which the zodiac is built answers many puzzling questions heretofore unanswered, such as, why are there 12 signs in the zodiac, 12 apostles, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 months in a year, 12 hours of the day and night, and not 10, 15, or another number? Why is 13 considered unlucky? Its real occult significance. The number 15, is it the devil? Why the numerical name of the order of Christian mystics? The mystery number of the sun and its significance. The divine number, the meaning of the higher Hebrew letters, the meaning of the higher tarot cards. Pre-publication announcement will be made in the fall of 1917. To all names on our list. What? Guys, I gotta find this book. All right, I'm gonna be on a hunt now. And the voice of Isis. Gems of mysticism. Okay, so I'm scrolling. Obviously I'm using my mouse, right? And I'm scrolling down. And a page keeps popping up, but it's not there. So freaky. All right, now it's ended. I'm gonna go try to find that book, guys. There's a part 2 to this, and I must get my hands on it. Hopefully I'll have internet and an abundant life so that I can keep doing this. I'm so excited. No idea. So guys, this book was incredible. Besides the appendix, which was a little banana nuts. Yeah. Amazing book, a lot of good correlations, a lot of tying a lot of loose ends together. You can see this book reverberating through the other books that I've been reading. The Keys of Enoch, the Book of Enoch, the Law of One, Melchizedek, Pistis Sophia, even the Urantia book, and even a Waspe. Little components here and there fit in. Yeah. So sending each and every one of you love and light. I hope you enjoyed this book. Tell me in the comments. Please don't forget to hit that like button. Again, when even in the Enlightenment period of philosophy in the 1800s until like early 1900s, we have to keep in mind that the dynamics of a wife and a man and their roles in society were very much like stringent and like this is it and there's no other way. So we have to be mindful that our times have molded and changed since then. In a, I don't know if it was a good way, a bad way, whatever. So keep that in mind for anybody who feels a little offended by what was said. It's not meant to, it's just the way their mindset was in the frame of societal roles back then. Things have changed. So keep that in mind. Until the next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Keep your vibration high. Don't allow what you hear, see, and feel in the news affect you. There's a lot of things that are coming out that are really, really vicious and scary. But you have to take yourself out of that equation and uplift yourself. Don't lower yourself into fear. Trust in the higher source. Be safe, everybody. Love and light. Have a great night, day, evening, morning, brunch, lunch, breakfast, dinner. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.